Hey everyone! ChatGP Taylor aka Taylor here. Welcome back to the channel. Today's video will be something pretty different from my usual content. And I know that I say that a lot, but I really do mean it this time. Most of my content generally relates strongly to this venture camp in some way, shape, or form. But for today's video, I'm going to go past this venture camp and look at the niche of indie animated competition shows as a whole. And what I'm hoping is that we can have a discussion amongst ourselves in the comments of this video to talk about this subject as a whole. But before I begin, make sure to like and subscribe if this video is to your liking, and make sure to comment down below if there's anything that you would like to see going forward. The topic for today's video is something that I've been thinking about recently, and that's the topic of indie animated competition shows. From what I've seen, a lot of the most well-known indie animated competition shows tend to follow the format and style of total drama. Well-known shows in this genre like this Venture Camp, Clash Island, Odyssey Del Drama, and to some degree, Inanimate Insanity, generally follow the same format as total drama. And I can kind of see why. After all, when you think of the term animated competition shows, it's natural for total drama to be the first show to come to mind. So it makes sense to say that total drama's existence inspired indie creators to try and use their format to make a show of their own. And after all, following a format like total drama would likely help make the indie show more relatable and familiar to your target audience. That being said, total drama's format is not the only way to hold a competition show. It's important to keep in mind that total drama as a show and as a format was largely an homage to Survivor, which is a real-life reality competition show. And in real life, there are so many other reality competition shows out there with very distinct formats just waiting to be used as inspiration. The total drama franchise has already taken this step by creating the Ridonkulous Race, whose format largely parallels a real-life show called The Amazing Race. So even though this niche of the internet with indie animated competition shows is pretty saturated with total drama style shows, I feel like there's a bit of an open market for indie animated competition shows with different formats. An example of an indie animated competition show that goes down this path would be Reality Resort of the Reality Project channel. From what I can tell, the first season of this project has a format that closely follows the format of a real-life reality competition show called King of the Nerds. The two teams compete in an immunity challenge. The losing team must vote one member of their team into a duel, the winning team must vote another member of the losing team into the duel, and the two duelers will face off, with the losing competitor getting eliminated. I like this format, and it's definitely a format that I've considered using for fan seasons of my own. And if I remember correctly, I believe it was revealed at one point that Season 2 of the Reality Project would play off the format of The Amazing Race, Season 3 would play off the format of Big Brother, and Season 4 would play off the format of the challenge. Don't quote me on that though, that's just what I've heard. And if this is the case, then if the Reality Project makes it that far, it could be a groundbreaker in a niche of indie animated competition shows that hasn't really been tapped yet, and I think that's exciting to think about. With all the reality competition shows on air today, there are so many different formats that could serve as inspiration for future indie animated competition shows. So for the rest of this video, I'll be going over a few different real-life reality competition shows, why I think they could work as an animated adaptation, and some of the challenges that people might face if they decided to use these shows as inspiration. To kick this off, let's start with a show that we know works as an animated adaptation, The Amazing Race. I'm sure that most of you watching know how this show's format works thanks to the Ridonkulous Race. But in case you don't, teams of two race around the globe completing challenges in different countries, and the last team to reach the designated checkpoint in each country is eliminated. I think the reasons why this kind of format has worked for an animated competition show is twofold. For one, having the competitors in pairs allows for a good mix of pre-existing interactions and new interactions between characters. And for an animated show that will likely need to include some form of drama, having a good mix of pre-existing and new interactions between characters will open the door for reasonable drama to be included in the series and give people a reason to watch the show beyond the competitive aspect of it. And secondly, with the ability to visit numerous places around the world, it opens the door for a lot of creative challenges to be made for the show. And as this would be a competition show, it's important to have creative challenges that are both entertaining and plot relevant. That being said, there are two things that I think indie creators should be aware of if they pursue this format for their show. One, I don't know if this format would be as enticing if it's the first show that a creator does. For FreshTV, since the Ridonkulous Race came after total drama, they were able to bring in some total drama characters to add some familiar faces for the viewers. In this situation, the viewers would be enticed to watch the show thanks to the familiar characters, and by extension, would also have to watch the new characters and see that they are also worth watching. So, I think an indie creator would probably benefit from having a show with this format after having an already existing show. For example, if Odd Nation Cartoons were to make an Amazing Race parody, they could bring in duos like Jake and Tom, James and Aiden, Alec and Fiore, or even Will and Ashley, allowing for some fan favorites to return while also giving others some opportunity to finally get some development. And secondly, I think with this format, indie creators should be careful to treat each location with respect and to not do things that are offensive or too stereotypical. This should be an opportunity to help show the world the beauty and unique aspects of other countries, rather than using them purely as tools for comedy. And even though the goal is to entertain, it's possible to entertain while also teaching people about the world, and the format of The Amazing Race is something that I think could accomplish that. And with this format bringing these benefits, there are other formats that can bring different benefits. Up next, we have a show that is very well known in the reality competition show community, most commonly known as Big Brother. For those that don't know about this format, every week starts with an individual competition where the winner becomes the head of household, also known as the HOH. This person then chooses 2 people to nominate for elimination, which in this game is known as eviction. Then the HOH, the 2 nominees, and 3 people selected by random draw compete in a competition known as the Power of Veto competition, where the winner wins the right to save one nominee from eviction, if they want to. If the power of veto is used, the HOH must name a replacement nominee, leaving 2 contestants on the nomination block, and at the end of the week, the entire house must vote out one of the 2 nominated contestants, with the contestant that receives the most votes being eliminated from the game. I think a big reason why this format could work for an animated show is twofold. For one, there's a lot of relatable drama that could sprout from people being locked in a house together for weeks on end. It's not like total drama where you could just wander alone in a forest if you wanted some alone time. In a show with Big Brother's format, you're locked in an enclosed space with a bunch of strangers for a long time, and the lack of alone time can drive you crazy. I'm sure that there are a bunch of you watching who really value your alone time, and having to be around other people 24/7 can drive you crazy and cause drama to start, which can be used as inspiration for writing. And secondly, having multiple challenges with different powers would be a good change of pace. In total drama, winning challenges usually only earns you immunity or a reward. But with the Big Brother format, winning challenges can give you a direct hand in deciding who can and can't be voted out for that week, which I think would add some new dynamics to a competition-focused show. That being said, there are some things that I think creators should be careful of when pursuing this kind of format for their show. For one, because of all the challenges and ceremonies required for this format, it sort of requires the show to have more episodes than the average season in order to maintain the correct pacing. And a longer season ultimately comes with a longer commitment from the staff and an increased budget to accommodate the longer process. So, the creators must be careful to pace the season well enough in order to accommodate all the necessary moments, while also remaining under budget. And secondly, I think the theming of the season is a critical point for the show, because there's only so much inspiration that a show can take from being stuck in a house. So, the theming of the season is important as it will help dictate the kinds of challenges that could be used for the season. And while I know that these kinds of shows require the importance of a good story as well, it's also important to have challenges that keep the audience engaged. That's true for a format like Big Brothers, and it's also true for the next show that I want to mention. The next show that I want to mention is something that's recently been catching my eye, and I think it could be interesting as an animated series, and that's a little show called The Traitors. For those that haven't heard of it, the format involves a group of people being put into challenges to try and add money to a prize pool. The catch is that while many of the contestants are designated as faithfuls, there is an anonymous group of 3 or 4 contestants known as the Traitors, who are trying to vote out the faithfuls so that they can claim the money for themselves. Every night, the Traitors meet up to decide which faithful to murder, and after every challenge, the entire group reconvenes and they have to debate who to vote out, and the contestant with the most votes, whether that be a faithful or a traitor, is eliminated and they have to reveal their allegiance to the whole group. At the end of the season, the remaining campers have to decide whether to end the game or to continue voting people out. Once all the remaining campers decide to end the game, if there are only faithfuls left in the game, all the faithfuls split the money that they've accumulated in the prize pool. But if there are any traitors left, then all the traitors split the money amongst themselves, leaving the faithful with nothing. I think what makes this format unique compared to the ones that I've mentioned previously is because this format opens the door to have multiple winners, rather than just one person or one duo. With this potential for multiple winners, I think it would allow the viewers to feel more comfortable with rooting for multiple people, assuming that they're on the same side, as it's now possible for multiple people to end up with a victory. Additionally, I feel like The Traitors as a show has really grown in popularity over the last few years. And with different editions of this format appearing in many countries around the world, I feel like there's enough international appeal for this format that having it in the form of an indie animated series could work out. And this format would provide a good break from the traditional format of win a challenge, you win immunity, and instead focusing on the challenges actually contributing to the amount of money that the cast can win. That being said, taking inspiration from the Traitors format also comes with its potential difficulties. To start, the average cast size for The Traitors is generally larger than that of a total drama-inspired show or a Big Brother-inspired show, so this requires the creators to create more characters with their own story or distinct personality, which isn't necessarily the easiest thing to do. And having to split the same amount of airtime among a larger cast is also not an easy thing to do, so that's definitely something to consider. Also, from what I've seen in the fan community for the Traitors franchise, there are some sections of the community who seem to be critical of the format of the show itself. Specifically, there are criticisms regarding how the format results in the actual smart players being killed earlier on while the less skilled ones are able to make it far, which might make the show less appealing for the game-savvy viewers. And with any show, it's usually best to not intentionally alienate a portion of the fanbase that you're trying to attract. And that stands for both this show and the next show on this list. The last show on this list is probably the one that I'm the least familiar with, but I think it's still worth mentioning, and it's known as The Challenge. While there are variations in the format from season to season, the general format is that there's a group challenge where the winning individual or team receives immunity, then there's a vote to decide which competitors participate in an elimination duel, and whoever loses the duel is out of the game. The season then ends with a day-long race consisting of different challenges, with the first individual or team to finish the race winning the grand prize, which varies between seasons. From what I can tell, even though there's definitely some strategy and socializing involved, the show itself places a strong emphasis on the physicality and the challenges, which does add something different to this scene than most shows in this genre. That may help a potential indie animated adaptation stand out in this market. Additionally, with the format seemingly being tweaked season after season, I assume it helps stave off stagnancy as the show goes on. It's no wonder that the real-life series has over 40 seasons in its history. But of course, there are some considerations that should be noted regarding this format. Specifically, if the format continues to be tweaked season after season, I feel like it might make it harder to keep the audience on board if likable elements keep getting changed, although you could argue that remaining stagnant is worse. Additionally, since the show seems to be primarily physical and challenge-focused, I can't help but feel like it might take away from the storytelling aspect of the show. And even though I have seen some storytelling scenes from the actual show, and even though challenges should be relevant to the overall story in some way, I'm not certain if this format would allow for in-depth story arcs to be shown compared to other show formats. However, I'm more than willing to be proven wrong. But overall, whether or not we see new formats being used for these indie animated competition shows, I hope that we can see new creators popping into this scene in the future. I do believe that there are a lot of very creative and intelligent minds out there that are capable of creating, writing, and producing some incredible shows, whether they're in the animation scene or otherwise. And who knows? Maybe one day we'll have the luxury of watching various entertaining, yet diverse indie animated competition shows whenever we please. And that about does it for this video. What did you think of the video? What reality shows would you like to see indie creators take inspiration from with their own shows? Either way, please let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. Thank you very much for watching. Click like if you like the video, click subscribe if you really like the video, and for some ending words of wisdom. If you're going to make an animated reality competition show, don't forget to do some good storytelling. Even though it's supposed to be a reality show, that doesn't mean you can't build up a good story with a satisfying ending. Thank you, and farewell.